messing around downtown. You don't know me now. Keep me around. Came out, there's nothing I'm gonna do. No need to get crooked. Ain't gonna mistreat you. Honey, I know you gotta get what you get, but baby, I ain't gonna let you forget that I ain't your dog. So don't you go dogging me now. Hey ma, I know you ain't a little girl. You got your ways around this whole wide world. Hey ma, I'll make a deal with you. I'll be your regular. If you'll be true. Well, honey, I know you gotta get what you get, but baby, I ain't gonna let you forget that I ain't your dog. So don't you go dogging me. I ain't your dog. So don't you go dogging me. I ain't your dog. So don't you go dogging me now. Thank you. This next one is inspired by Big Bill Brunzi. And this tune was written in reflection of Roe v. Wade being overturned. It's a single I'm releasing this November, and it's called "Cruel Old World." Could you spare some romance? Maybe a little bit of love. Could you send me a sweet from above? 'Cause you know there's so much time before your last breath. Could you send me some big brown eyes to help me forget that we're living in a cruel old world? So you better watch your back. Yeah, we're living in a cruel old world. They're gonna take it all from you. Let me tell you, they're gonna take it all from you. some big brown eyes to help me forgive that we're living in a cruel old world. So you better watch your back. Yeah, we're living in a cruel old world. We're gonna take it all from you. Let me tell you, we're gonna take it all from you.
Thank you. Sorry about the malfunction there. Got a good little lick there. That'll probably do the trick. So yeah, I study country blues, which is a type of music from America, specifically more so from the 20s and 30s. So I write songs inspired by those ideas and just trying to keep the tradition going in a way that I can contribute. So yeah, let's see what I would like to do next. Let's do some slide. So it was very popular for Delta blues players and other players to do open tunings. So the tuning I'm moving to is called Open G. And Robert Johnson used this a lot, Son House, and various other members of the blues. So this next tune, I'm kind of starting out pretty dark, I would say, but I think there's a lot of darkness in the blues, and there's also a lot of hope as well, and a lot of joy. But this tune in particular, it's called Forget My Name. And I found out my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia, and you know, when someone has dementia, they eventually forget who you are. And it's just kind of like a mantra running through my head: forget my name. And this tune's inspired by Skip James, who was part of the Bentonia Blues. Sounds kind of creepy. There's something really eerie to it. So I kind of wrote it as a murder ballad, except you were the one that was murdered. And murder ballads are very popular in folk music, but it's kind of like a ghost murder ballad, if you will. Yeah, let's. I have a version with slide and without slide. Do you guys have a preference? Do you know what slide is? Yeah, it's do a slide. All right. So yeah, this is called "Forget My Name." We'll add some percussion too for this one because I think that'll add a nice little element to it.
forgetting my name. Tears fall from your face. Hey baby, with the tears fall from your face. Well, as that joker says, raining in my place. Hey baby, there's no last kind words. Hey baby, there's no last kind words. Kind words are never spoken. Kind words never heard. Hey baby, you will me in the night. Hey baby, you will hear me in the night. When the floorboards are creaking, under covers you hide. Hey baby, will you put flowers on my grave? Hey baby, will you put flowers on my grave? Hey baby, will you put flowers on my grave? Hey baby, will you put flowers on my grave? Are you just gonna forget my name?
Thank you. list here. So I released an EP. I don't know how many months ago, but they're all songs inspired by the country blues. That song's on it. Ancient Dog's on it. We took it, and if you guys, I don't know if you guys know Blind Willie McTell, but there's these recordings of Blind Willie McTell done by the Library of Congress in, I think, I want to say like 47. I'd have to double check, but you can find those recordings in the sound. We mastered it to be this very low fidelity popping and crackle sound to emulate that specific recording. And historically, it's something to listen to because there's a lot of conversation between the member of the Library of Congress recording Blind Willie McTell, and they're in Atlanta, Georgia, and you can hear they're just in a house, like all the street like commotion and everything. It's really something, and a real interesting reflection of the time. But anyhow, let's see here. I'm gonna play something a little lighter. This next tune is inspired by one of my favorite slide players named Tampa Red. He played behind Ma Rainey, and I don't know if you guys might know Bessie Smith. Does that name sound familiar? Bessie Smith. So Ma Rainey was Bessie Smith's mentor, and again, going back to, I think that blues has kind of over time created a certain reputation due to people that were on labels and such, and the audience members that were digging it at the time. As time moved on, it kind of became this like aggressive certain sound or something. Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith were both, they were lesbians, they were queer, and they were the real deal. And I think people fail to realize how much of blues is kind of like an outsider's music, and you're indulging in a lifestyle that isn't typical and is not approved of. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. So I'm just kind of carrying through some of these names and some of these people in hopes that maybe you'll check them out if you haven't heard them before, and just showing you the tunes that, like, I've done a lot of transcription from a lot of these different artists, which means I've learned songs from them and listening to records, but again, it's trying to revitalize those songs in my own interpretations and bringing them to people. This tune's basically an ode, just within the joy and the expression of Tampa Red's playing. And this song is called Back to Tampa. Right. So I think this next tune we're gonna do. Wednesday mentioned the song that I've done before. It's originally by an artist named Charlie Patton, who was kind of, we could say the father or the grandfather of the Delta blues. He taught Howlin' Wolf, Son House, Robert Johnson. Everything kind of dates back to them, and they were the first person from the Delta to be recorded. Before that, Charlie Patton's teacher or mentor was Henry Sloan, but we don't have any recordings of them. But what's really cool also about Charlie Patton is he kind of had these interesting theatrics like Jimi Hendrix, like would throw the guitar up. He'd be playing in this area where it's all dirt, and people would sit, and he'd be kicking dirt up, and apparently you could hear him like about 5 football fields away, and in this low, gravelly voice, and he would have like this dialogue going on. Like, again, it was very theatrical, so there'd be one person talking, and then in this other voice, someone else would be responding to that voice, kind of those traditional call and response sounds of gospel and of the work of the time. So yeah, this song is kind of a mix between Charlie Patton and Son House, and we're gonna add a little bit of fire to it with this amplification here just for fun. And let's see here, where is that chord? Too many things. Oh, it's all the way over there. This song is called Pony Blues. Hopefully I can sing loud enough to get this going. We'll see.
I see the ground, new shelling, already trained. So getting settled, tightened up on the reins. Catch my pony, hitch a mile right now. Catch my pony, hitch a mile right now. I'll find a rider, maybe in the world somewhere.
Thank you. Wednesday, let me know kind of timing too.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like 2 or 3.
2 or 3? Yeah, 2 or 3 sounds good. This one is kind of similar. Inspired by Mississippi Fred McDowell, who was, and this is relating back to like pop music and how so much of country blues has influenced, pop music over time. Mississippi Fred McDowell was a mentor to Bonnie Raitt I believe it was like the 60s during the folk revival. So a lot of the country blues players, not all of them lived that long. A lot of them, either died mysteriously or were poisoned, or we don't really know what happened, or, they died of terrible deaths of TB and whatever else diseases were going around at the time. And Mississippi Fred McDowell was one of the people that made it out, Mississippi John Hurt, and these different figures of the blues and artists were founded by different music ethnologists that were going down to the South or going around those areas and just finding these different artists based upon records that they found from the 20s and 30s. But anyways, this song is called Sweet Toothache, and it's inspired by Mississippi Fred McDowell.
Bubblegum baby, sweet toothache. Bubblegum baby, sweet toothache. Can't wait to get that buzz from you, honey. Get my knees to shake. Rattle my bones, shake my grave. Rattle my bones and shake my grave. You can be the sip of whiskey that my emptiness craves. Bubblegum baby, sweet toothache. Bubblegum to share.
Thank you. Let me think of some other tunes that I want to share with y'all. If there's something I haven't really covered. You guys want something ragtime inspired, old time inspired, or Delta inspired, meaning like slide? What do you guys think?
Ragtime.
Ragtime? Okay. Let me turn this off. And the tune to is ragtime sounds. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is great. Excited to hear more music performances, spoken word, open mic experiences. I don't really remember my first one. I just feel like I've been on stage for a long time, and I just always want to go back for some reason. I don't know what it is. It's like a place of comfort and safety to some degree, I think, for me, which I'm very thankful for that. Yeah, and I don't know, I relish in those moments of performance, but I also relish in the moments of solitude and writing and those other moments as well. I think it's interesting too that, just talking about blues, like how the blues is definitely a guitar-driven style of music to some extent, but I do find it interesting how some people tend to forget about the lyrical substance of blues and how so much of it's metaphorical, and people take so much of it quite literally. And it's interesting too when you look at some of these lyrics and like you kind of decode it, because there's so much language that we don't use. Like people are always asking me like, what's a special rider? What does that mean? And even something like that, like a special rider or your rider, is not necessarily your partner, husband, or wife, or someone that's your through thick and thin, but your rider is someone that you have some fun with, or like other interesting things I'm thinking of. The metaphors of train, or like trains, or that Pony Blues song, for instance, like how much of it's just kind of an observation sometimes of just your surroundings and using those different elements of your environment and incorporating into your writing, which almost makes some of it like very like impressionistic almost, and just super evocative. And those images have stood the test of times for American music. We hear in country music now, rock music, hip hop, like every style of music known to American music, which is pretty incredible. Because it all really stems from these sounds, because it's the people's music, Sorry, we're almost there. Let me check which ragtime tune I want to do. It's kind of like a ragtime blues. My mother and father, when I was a child, and would be, I'd be in the back of the car with my sister. We would be like, "Oh, I'm thirsty. I need something to drink," and they would say like, "Suck on your spit." So I just, I'm 28 now, so I'm just reflecting on a lot of those different things throughout my 20s, and I wrote this song. It's called "Cries For Coca-Cola," and thought of that.
cries for Coca-Cola, but I ain't got it down. Bill cries for Coca-Cola, but I ain't got it down. So baby, suck on cheer you up in town. You say your feet are tired, and there ain't no time to rest. You say your feet are tired, and there ain't no time to rest. The way you cry, child, you're putting me to the test. I said I don't know why the sky's painted blue. Said I don't know why the sky is painted blue. Birds fly up above, I'm stuck on this ground with you. And if I could catch a freight train every time you scream my name, I could catch a freight train every time you scream my name. Yeah, I leave this old town, but all my dreams are in vain. Baby cries for Coca-Cola, but I ain't got a dime. Baby cries for Coca-Cola, but I ain't got a dime. So baby, suck on spit, cheer you up in time.
Thank you. I'm gonna do one more. This is not an original, but I think some of the themes we're talking about, and I think one of the most prominent figures from the country blues that we know is Robert Johnson. This kind of goes back to the idea of blues kind of being outsider music and how kind of the nature of it turned into funk, R&B, rock and roll, jazz, etc., etc., and poetry. Really, a lot of emphasis on poetry. I think there's not people don't tend to make that correlation, but there's a huge correlation between jazz, blues, and poetry. And where I'm going with this is we're talking about Robert Johnson, one of the most prominent figures, and the folklore of Robert Johnson is probably most people know, I think, is that he goes to the crossroads and he sells his soul to the devil, and the devil changes the tuning of the guitar, and it becomes this mysterious thing. Like he disappeared and came back, and he was a very good guitar player. But really, where that whole story starts is, to give you an idea, is that Son House, as he was being rediscovered during the 60s, was kind of being overshadowed by the legacy of Robert Johnson during that time. And people were saying to Son House in interviews, oh, like how did Robert Johnson get so good at the guitar? Because, you know, Son House was the senior of Robert Johnson. He was much older, and Son House remembers him mostly as a child. But at any rate, they'd ask, how did he get so good? And he would slide a tongue, and Son House, having such a large ego, would say it must have been the devil. And it was kind of this quick way to just shut up the person doing the interview and just move along, and make a joke of it, kind of sleight of hand. Now, Son House's recollection of Robert Johnson is that he was an unruly kid. He didn't want to work on the, in the fields. Like, he didn't want to follow the rules. He was kind of naughty. And Robert Johnson's growing up in this area, and he's seeing Charlie Patton, he's seeing Son House, and he's being really inspired. And he starts picking up the guitar, but they're like, this kid, he's not any good. He's not really a bluesman or a player. And Robert Johnson in his teens falls in love with this woman who's from a very conservative family at the time. And he asks to marry her, and her family forbid it. And she turned Robert Johnson down and it's the end of marriage, and he decides to leave. And I think he goes to take up a trade with his uncle, learn a skill, but he also starts taking lessons with Ike Zimmer, who's a really incredible guitar player, but we don't have any recordings of him. And several of Robert Johnson's songs are actually written by Ike Zimmer. But Robert Johnson would sit with Ike in the kitchen, or he would also take him to graveyards late at night, and they would work together on the instrument. And the philosophy and the methodology of that was, if you are in the graveyard, no one can bother you. You're in complete solitude. You can hone your craft. So when Robert Johnson came back home and showed up at a juke joint and was playing all these different sounds that weren't just from the Delta, everyone was like, that's incredible. Like, how did this happen? So there was a lot of this envy and folklore around it. And Robert Johnson ultimately got poisoned by someone at a juke joint. And several of his peers were like, don't take drinks from anyone because people envy you for what you're doing. But where this all turns back to is the song called Love in Vain Blues. And it's a beautiful metaphor and such an incredible tune. And it's about Willie Mae, who was the young woman that Robert Johnson fell in love with, and he recorded this song, and he pronounces her name in the song, and Willie Mae hears it years later, and she didn't know that he recorded this song about her, and I guess was brought to tears during this situation, during this recording. So I think a lot of blues, again, it comes from a longing of outside, or feeling outside and wanting something more, and there's just something yearning there. And I think that also extended into rock and roll, this idea of lust and wanting the pleasures of life, because why would I want to do these normalities when I don't really, that's not who I am, or I can't live that way. It's interesting. But this is called Love in Vain Blues.
In my hand, yeah, I followed her to the station with a suitcase in my hand. Well, it's hard to tell when all your love's in vain, all my love. On behind, gas station with 2 lights on behind. Well, the blue light was my blue, and the red light was my mind. All my hey, hey. Wait a minute. Yeah. All my
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Wednesday. Thank you for having me, everyone. I appreciate you guys stopping and listening. And, I'm excited for more tunes and more spoken word and whatever else you guys have to offer. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.